You're listening to The Flickcast, a podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and joining me, Joe Dilworth. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Chris. How are you?
You're my density, Joe.
You are my density. Yes.
Yes. Well, if that doesn't tell you what we're going to talk about today on this episode of The Flickcast, I don't know what will. It's a time travel episode, really, if you think about it. But don't think about it too much. Yes, we will discuss Indiana Jones and the Pick of Destiny, and we'll also discuss...
Dial of Destiny.
That's it, Dial of Destiny. And we'll also discuss the latest episode of Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, which also deals with time travel. See?
So this is kind of a sequel to a couple episodes back where we talked about Raiders, and I think we still also talked about Strange New Worlds in that one. So
it is a sequel of sorts, or not, but not a prequel, or is it? Are we stuck in a time loop of some kind, a closed loop, where what all this has happened before and all of it will happen again?
I'll tell you, Chris, I'm really looking forward to Comic-Con 2008. I can't wait.
I know it's going to be amazing. That was a good Comic-Con, if I remember correctly.
Although that was a great Comic-Con. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, which I probably don't, I'm pretty sure there was a lot of rum and coke involved. I should say that this is going to be a spoiler-heavy episode with Dial of Destiny and also with Star Trek. Although Star Trek, people hopefully have seen that. Yeah. And people have seen, hopefully, Dial of Destiny, too. But if you haven't, because it is the first weekend that it's been out...
We're going to really spoil it. And it sounds like a lot of you haven't gone to see it, but that's okay. That's another discussion.
Maybe they're waiting for next week.
I think a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people are still going to the theaters anyway. But that's another another discussion. I think. But
yeah, and that definitely influenced me a little bit. But all right, well, let's. You want to just jump into Indiana Jones?
Yeah.
All right.
Tell me how much you hated it.
I didn't hate it. I would say it's
okay.
I think I feel the same way about it that I felt about Crystal Skull. As I don't necessarily, in my mind, I'm not prepared for old Indiana Jones. Much like I wasn't necessarily prepared for old Han Solo, which is still like, because when I saw these characters, as you did, they were young and virile and strong and handsome and whatever. And it's okay to age. People can get old. That's fine. I don't necessarily have to see it. I think the first 40 minutes was an amazing Indiana Jones movie, except for the parts where he's running on top of the train, which was laughable CG, by the way. It was terrible. What the hell, guys? The de-aging thing, I think, is the best I've ever seen. Naturally, it helped that it was shot at night and that they did the flashlight trick on him and only showed his face occasionally. That helped too. And I will say that some of the cinematography, and maybe it was the theater I saw it in, which is an Alamo Drafthouse here in Austin, which usually has really good projection. Some of it seemed pretty dark, and it was hard to follow the action sometimes, even though you know what's going on, obviously. But I enjoyed the first part of it. Here's my question: maybe I'm just tired of seeing my heroes reduced to old losers. Does that make sense? Because Indy's he's he doesn't care, and the other thing is he doesn't want to be involved. He has no reason to be involved in the story. He's I don't want to go. I don't care. And here's this person who comes out of nowhere, his goddaughter or whatever. That's a stretch, but it's and she's I just finished school. But did she finish school, or was she an international thief that had a whole life in another country stealing antiquities and stuff, or was she just finishing school? Which was it? And the movie kind of fell apart for me once all of that started. Once we came to modern times. I mean, there were some cool parts of it, the bad guys were kind of cool. Mads Mikkelsen can do no wrong, in my opinion. Always terrific.
Sure.
But it's why did Boyd Holbrook's character have to just shoot people indiscriminately? I know they're Nazis, they're bad. You don't have to keep showing them kill people for no reason. It's what? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I guess they're just disposable. I don't know. It's just, the movie started falling apart for me, and it's Indy was a reluctant tag along on this entire adventure, basically driven by Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character and her short round and substitute. There was no reason for Indy to be there, and much like people can make the same argument with Raiders, if Indy hadn't gone along, then they wouldn't have found the Dial of Destiny in the first place. So it's and I know the whole point of it is that's the MacGuffin, and the whole point of the movie is to get him and Marion back together so they can touch elbows at the end. But it's even that felt forced. I mean, she was basically a shoe-in at the end of the movie. It's we forgot about Marion. Let's get her in the last 2 seconds. I would have been more interested in her being involved in the story, too. So anyway, that's... maybe over time it'll grow on me like Crystal Skull did.
Wow.
But no, I didn't love it. I got to be honest with you. I didn't love it. I liked the beginning, but I don't think Phoebe Waller-Bridge was interesting at all. The movie just dies when she's on screen, and she's a total dick, by the way, too. and betrays Indy like more than one time, and he's like, "Oh, it's okay. I don't care. I'm old. I don't care anymore what happens." And then never more illustrated by the fact that he would have chosen death at the end of the movie than rather go back to where he was. It's like, I don't care about anything. I just want to die. So anyway, that's my opinion. Yeah, of course.
Were you in a bad mood?
No, and
when you
that's
went and
I
saw
was not in a bad mood at all.
Or,
It just it wasn't. There was no
you,
fun. Harrison Ford didn't.
did
Harrison
you stub
Ford didn't
your
even seem
toe?
like he was having fun. He seemed like he was bored. He seemed like he.
And he completely drove how Indy was depicted.
Maybe that's I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's just a tired, angry old guy. He's like a cranky old man. I don't know. But it's just like, and again, I'm sure a lot of that is the fact that I just watched Raiders and I just watched, the original trilogy, whatever you want to call it. And that's the Indiana Jones that I remember. It's like, where was Short Round? Mutt got killed off screen. What a disservice to that character, too. Here's the thing. Here's my pitch for this movie. I would have been much more interested if Indy was personally invested in the story. If for some reason, let's say, just for the sake of argument, that Mutt and Short Round are buddies. They are off. Mutt is keeping the family business going. Indy could be retired, whatever. And then maybe Mutt disappears and he and Short Round have to go save him. Or the opposite happens. But just how could you just get rid of Short Round completely? It's like he never existed. They don't even talk about him. He talks about Molar Ram and getting his blood, having to drink the blood of Khalid, but he never mentioned Short Round once. A kid, he basically almost killed people for, to save. Never brings him up again. So
Well, he didn't in the other movies.
I know, but this would have been the perfect time. If this is the send off for the character, and Sallah comes back, but
yes, Sallah has to come back.
Right,
Salah's been in the other movies,
but no Short Round. It would have been a great. By the way, there would have been a great moment where they said, like we named the dog Indiana. Short Round's not really my name, by the way, dickhead. Like how long have we known each other, Indy? And Indy's not really your name, Henry. So it's like that would have been funny, but I don't know.
He goes, "Oh, Short Round." And he's like, "That's
I've been using that name for
Henry.
years." Dr. Jones,
Hank.
I don't know.
Hank.
It's just I don't know. It's just the whole thing was like. And I'm a fan of James Mangold, too. And I thought Logan was terrific. I don't know. I'm not sure what they were trying to do in this thing. And you know what else I realized, too, is that Spielberg is such a good director. Even in like the movies he didn't care about, like he's phoning in Crystal Skull a little bit. Like the action scenes are shot and portrayed like they propel the story along. This is like they're driving the most souped up Tic Tacs or whatever they're called in the history of it's like that's not that.
Well, we didn't have, any slapstick or, wah jokes. So I guess, we're missing.
Well, I feel like that was more of a George Lucas influence, but that wasn't in the first couple of movies. That was in Crystal Skull a little bit.
It's definitely started in Raiders as the only
I feel like that's more of a George influence, like dumbing down. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got problems with Last Crusade too. Dumbing down Marcus and Sallah as becoming buffoons, that was like stupid too. But I don't know. I'm sure you loved it. I'm sure you thought it was terrific, and that's great. I'm glad you did. I didn't hate it. I just
I hate it
I've
now.
ruined it
Thank
for you.
you.
No, you don't.
I'm just kidding. You did.
I don't know. I don't know what I expected. I had low expectations, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it my full attention. I'm gonna try my best. But I couldn't help myself. I'm like, why are we doing this? Why? And then time travel? Seriously? I mean, it's like that's what you could come up with, all the brain trust and the geniuses in the world time travel story. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know they're cool, but it's like, why? And also crashing a.
Wow.
Well, that's
why
true.
do the
Why
movie
do the
at
movie
all?
at all? Exactly.
I mean,
crashing a plane on the beach.
Yeah.
In Syracuse didn't have any effect on history. Although I think it's funny, they wake up and they're all in the apartment. They didn't look out the window and see the Roman Empire had taken over the entire world. There's like centurions marching in the streets. Yes. That would have been that's
they
the
didn't
sequel,
show us that
right?
part.
They're going to have like Indiana Jones 6.
Sallah comes in with the broom
exactly.
helmet instead of his.
That's
his
that's where Short Round is. He's like a Roman centurion now.
He's got to go back.
I just would have liked to see.
No,
because they set it up so even though Crystal Skull has problems, the end of Crystal Skull, Indy, he's a happy man. He's got a family life. He's got a wife. He's got a kid. He's got all this stuff. Why just destroy that? Why not just show him being happy? Why not bring Karen out and Marion in? Why not just show? I would have watched a show with like Indy is doing some like domestic shit. It's like I'm happy in my garden, or I'm happy doing whatever, and like he's ignoring Mutt, just like his dad did. He's following the same patterns that Henry Sr. followed, obsessing over some bullshit. Meanwhile, Mutt's out there doing the family business, and like I don't know. I would have been more invested in the story if Indiana Jones was more invested in the story. I just feel like he was a tag along for the whole thing.
They weren't going to bring back Shia LaBeouf.
Why not? Why not?
It just wasn't going to happen. Well, A, because he's problematic, and B, how much over the years he's slagged off the movie and Spielberg and George Lucas.
Well, they could have
everybody. So there's no way he was coming back. There was absolutely no way. Well, that would. You'd think that would have been better for the fan base than...
I don't know. No, I'm sure that was like... I feel like that was a petty revenge on the part of Spielberg. It's like, just kill the fucker off the screen, you know? It's like...
Spielberg
was the executive producer of the movie. Of course he had something to do with it. And he was the director of the movie up until Mangold took over.
I think it was It sounds like it was Mangold's...
well, maybe. I don't know. So. But...
Because he's talked extensively about... here's
what's
why
he going to say?
This,
he's not going to go against Papa Steven. Come on. He wants to make another Star Wars movie. He wants not going to go against George Lucas and Lucasfilm and Disney. He's going to do whatever he has to do to keep working. He's a director who likes to work. Anyway, you loved it, so tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I did love it. Well, I mean, you can have your feelings. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great adventure. You could have your feelings, just not here. But no, I'm kidding. I saw it very differently than you. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great bookend to Raiders. For me, we've discussed before how over the years I now really have not a distaste, but I don't have a very good view of Last Crusade anymore. That is just too campy, too like Keystone Cops, Looney Tunes kind of weird humor that's just like I've said before, Last Crusade felt like, well, hey, remember that character Indiana Jones? We should do a movie about what it would be like to make an Indiana Jones movie.
That's funny, yeah.
Kind of. And so it was like, oh yeah, I'm sure all this zaniness was in there before, right? And then after they make it, it's like, oh, well, no, it really wasn't. Oops. And it was lessened in Crystal Skull, which I appreciated. And I really like the fact that here it took the more serious tone. I mean, there was humor in it, of course. I mean, I even like, I'm a big fan of the little things. I even liked, the part where, when they're going away from the boat, where they do the usual thing in Indiana Jones movies or any movies where it's like, oh, it's all a joke now and stuff. And Indy's like, my friend just got murdered. And he's like visibly upset about it.
Yeah, but then he never brings it up again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because time passes. But still, I mean, in previous movies, it's like, oh, like, at the beginning of Temple of Doom, this guy that's his good friend gets shot and dies. And he's like, okay, let's just go roll the gong around and do all this crazy stuff. This will be fine. And never says anything. But here it was like, oh, yeah, there's impact. I did not dislike Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I thought she was great. It was like, I think part of it was Indy was like, the old Fortune and Glory thing. Here she is. She could be what I became. And instead she's going for the Fortune and Glory. And that's not cool.
It's not cool.
And he felt this allegiance to her because it was his goddaughter. And everyone's like, oh, the goddaughter. We've had one movie since that took place between, when the opening of this movie took place and now. So it's like, well, of course, he was... Yeah.
No, it's hard for me to get invested.
It's the same thing with like, why does Spock never mention he had a sister? It's like, well, maybe he did, but just not on screen.
Sure.
I mean, just because we didn't see it doesn't mean he
Well,
did.
that's the thing. Everything can't be off screen, though. It's like everything can't be, this entire relationship was developed. I mean, yeah, they flash back a little bit, but it's like, here's a character at the beginning of the movie that we've never met before, and he's got obviously a relationship with Phoebe, with her dad, and it's like they're buddies and they're searching for whatever, and then he gets killed or he gets crazy or whatever. But at least they try to go to. I'm not saying they didn't. They tried to go to a point where they've developed their relationship, and he's been around for the kid. All he did was try to help the kid and be like a mentor, especially when her father went crazy. And
Right.
that's my
Right.
problem. It's like she's just not a very nice person, I guess, and just betrays him left and right, and yet he doesn't seem to care about it. But maybe that's because you just give your kids 100 chances to try to make the right decision. He's not going to give
Well,
up on you.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. He's still
maybe.
trying to, and he succeeds, I think, in the end. And she's like, okay, I get it now. I like the fact that he got to, his final adventure, or is it, depending on how you read the
Well, I
ending.
thought that meant he can't have sex without his
He
hat.
or that it's like nobody else is going to be Indiana
That
Jones
could be
but
too.
me. So I think that's what was what they were saying there. It's like, oh, here's the hat. Who wants it? It's like, nope, it's mine.
Right.
Nobody else. But maybe he can't have sex with that. Maybe
Well,
Marion's
that's
like,
what
hey,
that
get
was
the
my
hat.
question about Marion too. She's like asking him like 3 times, "Are you back? Are you back?" What does that mean? Back from what? Does it
She just asked him
no, it was
once,
three
"Are you
times, dude.
back?"
Seriously.
And
And I'm just like, why is she asking? Is it turning out that he is the problem that their marriage broke up? Is it him who had a problem
yeah,
and
I
who was
believe it
like being
was.
difficult?
Yeah.
But what does she mean? Like she only likes him when he's out saving the world? I guess he's only cool. He's like gone on adventures. I don't know. I kind of
That's where they started.
that's how she gets off, man. She likes to bring the whip and the hat. So
Yes.
I don't know.
Man, you're
I'm
so
not cynical. I just
I
want
thought it
things.
was
I just
great,
want
and I
things to
think
be driven by
I
character and
liked.
story, not just thrown in there. And I like nostalgia to a point, but this movie was like there was almost too much of it. It's like they're relying on people just loving Indiana Jones, and I just
He had a great last adventure. I like the fact that his last adventure, he actually got to witness history. It's like, wow, here's a little gift for you, Indy. You get to actually be in history. And I get him at the end. And maybe I think this hits the same way for me that Picard season 3 hit, is that here's this guy, here's these characters, here's this adventure I've been on since the beginning. I haven't experienced it as it's come out, and it's like, okay, here's the end. I can get it, where he's just like, I don't want to retire, but I'm being forced to retire, and he's kind of in. It was 1969, but it's the quote unquote modern world, and he's become the relic now, and he's like, I just don't know how to navigate through this, and here's something devastating that happened to me, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to help Marion deal with it, and so I just did the indie thing and closed up. And he probably went off on some reckless adventures and realized, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore. And he's like, what am I even around for? And then here's this one final adventure, and then he got to finally be in history. And at the end, he's just like, I'm tired, I'm done, and I just want to stay here. And it's like, no, you're not done yet.
well
So,
maybe
I don't know. I really
he's
liked
not
it. I
done.
thought it was a great last adventure. It was a lot of fun. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it was way too long." We got to the end, and I was like, "Wow, that was a long time." But I didn't feel like, okay. I wasn't looking at my watch, going, "All right, are we done yet?"
Yeah, I wasn't
So
really
I don't
either.
know.
It was long, but that's fine. And I don't mind if things are long if there's something interesting going on. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't. Like I said, the beginning was great.
Watch it again
I will
when it
watch it
comes
again
out.
definitely.
You know,
I just and I don't know what I wanted from another Indiana
I
Jones
think
film.
I think there's
So
too much, and I don't get this from you, but the critiques I've been seeing, I think there's too much, like, because like someone was like, well, he just makes offhand comment, continental drift. It's like, how does that work? What is that? I'm like, it's a story, it's not real. And the point of the movie wasn't like leading up to how continental drift made this device go wrong. It's the story is about, much like Raiders of the Lost Ark. How did Ghost get trapped in this thing for however long, and then they killed a bunch of people? That wasn't the point of the movie, right? Just like, how is there's this cult and this guy can pull hearts out and put them back in? That's not the point of the movie. Who cares, right? It's about the characters. That's the MacGuffin. That's the part you can be hand wavy about and go, well,
well,
because
that's the
it's not
thing.
real
And
life,
if the movie
right?
is really
So
about Indy, I mean, is it about getting back with Marion? Then I feel like if
it's about Indiana Jones and getting through
it's
his
about
grief,
family,
and it's like,
Joe.
well, maybe you don't have to. It is about family. Maybe you don't have to
Yeah.
go out and have these great adventures to matter. You don't. That's not why. And you're joking aside. I don't. That's not why Marion was, in love with him. She's like, I need you as a person, and you weren't there, and I didn't know how to
Yeah.
handle my stuff, and and now it's like, I think that was kind of like, are you back? And it's like kind of back to
Yeah.
reality, back to, and he's like, yeah, I'm here
Yeah,
now.
that's
So
that's definitely I think the way they were intending it to be interpreted where
yeah,
interpreted
interpreted.
where she's saying, "Are you back with me
Yes,
now? Are we going to face this together? You disappeared."
right.
But he's like, "Yeah, I've been out there saving the world again." So, and no one cares. But it's funny to me. I always feel like watching him like in his little dumpy apartment or whatever. But I'm sure it's just because he's depressed or whatever. But I feel like someone like Indiana Jones can make money on like the speaking circuit, where he can go out like giving talks about stuff. You think he can make cash doing that? But
I
no,
don't
I
think
don't
he
think so.
likes
But
doing
why?
that though.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
guess it just.
but he could, yeah,
Or write a
or
book.
write a book
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
Come
But
on,
maybe top men would stop him from writing a book. Top.
top man. Yes.
So I think the bottom line for me is just it's hard for me to watch old Indiana Jones. I think that's what it is. I think that just
People don't like to see their
yeah,
heroes age. That's why Superman, Batman, comic book
yeah.
superheroes are perpetually
Yeah.
the same age. They're in their
Yeah,
30s
yeah.
forever.
Maybe
Right?
that's part of it. I don't
So
want to think about and I suppose that's one of the themes of the movie. You don't want to think about time really. You don't want to think about life passing you by.
right.
But I mean, someone like
Yes.
Indiana Jones, his life has not passed him by. I mean, he was relevant and he is relevant still, even if he doesn't notice it. I don't know. I'm sure there's more to it, and I'm sure if I watch it, because I really didn't like Crystal Skull that much, for many of the same reasons, especially seeing an older Harrison Ford playing Indiana Jones. Maybe, maybe it'll grow on me. I mean, I guess that's why I like the beginning more, because that's the Indy that I remember, and maybe they should just DH Harrison Ford for the entire movie. And he should just be, with AI, you could just make all the Raiders movies you want with Indiana Jones in his 30s. So, I don't know.
So less silliness, less camp. It was
Definitely
more
serious.
serious, and as I kind of expected from seeing the trailers, the tone felt more like Raiders to me. I mean, I could watch Raiders and watch this because I think they're exceptional bookends to a franchise, and I think I would be satisfied. I think I hear you on the nostalgia thing, and I think playing him as like the worn out, trodden hero, I could see like if no one had ever watched an Indiana Jones movie ever, and they watch this, they're gonna be like, "What the hell's up with Grandpa?"
Let's get you to bed, Grandpa.
Right? So yeah, so it's definitely not like, hey, here's an Indiana Jones movie that's accessible to any. It's certainly not accessible
No.
to everybody. I don't think. Maybe people could. I still think like older folks that are my age, because I'm the same age as old people,
Yeah.
and your age, could watch this and go, dude, I can totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally relate. I don't think you're well, and it doesn't need to because it's supposedly the final film in a franchise. But this isn't the movie that's going to bring a new generation of Indiana
No,
Jones
and
fans.
no offense
That's
to
what-
anybody,
you know.
but I don't think there's going to be a new generation of Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Indiana Jones goddaughter fans either. So,
No, and I think Kathleen Kennedy, George Lucas hating folks and Lucasfilm hating folks. I don't think that was
No.
ever the intention either. I don't think they're gonna. I don't think that was it. That's all because there was this whole rumor before they finished wrapping up the film and that she's going to use the time travel device to go back and they're going to insert her into various parts of the old other Indiana Jones movies and basically write them out of history, and she's going to be the new Indiana Jones. And I'm like, do you know how stupid that sounds? That's not going to happen.
well, not yet.
So
Not yet.
I don't think there was ever the intention. Yeah, wow. I don't think there was ever the intention that, oh yes, well, Indiana Jones 6 will star her.
This is
I
it.
think this is, yeah,
I did
this
like
is
the
it.
fact that
So,
Mad's character, his intention was not to go back and assassinate certain people. That was an interesting That was an interesting twist. I mean, he wanted to, although it was sort of telegraphed in a way because he talked to the waiter at the hotel. It was like, "Oh, you didn't win the war. Hitler lost the war." So you could tell he didn't like
Yes.
Hitler.
Like a Nazi that wants to go back
Yeah,
in
that
time
was
and
that.
kill Hitler, but not to change history, or to change history, but not to get rid of the Nazis,
Make
but
them more
to do
efficient.
it
Yeah, because
better.
he knows all the mistakes. So
Yeah, I was like, wow. Yeah,
that was interesting.
like
Yeah,
that's a good plan actually, but as it went.
it did go awry,
unfortunately,
just like it did in
for
Raiders.
him.
Just like it did in every other. Because Nazis are just dumb. I guess they don't figure stuff out. But
Well, they are,
yeah,
but anyway,
I don't know. I think I
too
would have also.
focused on
We don't have to
purity.
talk about it much longer, but I think I would have also liked to have seen different bad guys. Now I know why they did it because the Apollo missions were all that stuff and Werner von Braun, etc. And it kind of makes sense.
Yes.
But then they put on the uniforms, and I'm like, okay, come on, you guys just have those in a suitcase ready to go. I don't know. It's just anyway, it doesn't matter. But
Well, I honestly would, because we've discussed this before. My whole thing with the Indiana Jones franchise was my hope, and I thought that's what was going to happen because of Temple of Doom, that each of the movies could be set in any era that he could be alive in, and would be like, we'll have a supernatural one, we'll have one with aliens, we'll have one with super soldiers or something. I don't know, but the fact that it's like Indiana Jones is an archaeologist who fights Nazis, and that's what he's tagged to, and I'm like, well, yeah, in a couple movies, but that's not he's an archaeologist first and foremost, and that to me opened up a wide swath of storytelling possibilities. I mean, I'll be honest, we should have had more. I feel like we should have had more than 5 Indiana Jones movies. There should have been, several of them. It should have been something like James Bond, where every 2 or 3 years, here's a new Indiana Jones movie. We should have had a lot of those, and for whatever reasons, we didn't.
they're expensive.
Yeah, and it sounds.
And you have grumpy Harrison Ford who
and I
doesn't want to
know-
do it. So
Well, you have Lucas and Spielberg that are busy. That's why maybe it should have been handed off. Someone like Mangold or Joe Johnston should have got involved earlier. And it's like, okay, you guys come up with the stories, and we'll have a director that's associated with you or knows your storytelling well, and can make a good movie. I think making it so it had to be Lucas and Spielberg all this time was one of the big reasons why we didn't have more. So
I was also sad not to
that's,
see the Paramount Mountain logo.
and have it morph into like a
Yeah,
molehill
whatever.
or whatever.
That should have been the
each
way it
movie.
goes. But they did have that.
It's much like the Fox fanfare missing from the Star
It
Wars.
doesn't seem
movies.
right.
It's
Yeah,
just not
something
right.
seems wrong. So I will. I mean, obviously, I'm going to watch it again. With a maybe, I don't know, I want to say less critical eye, or with a more critical eye, or whatever. I'll just watch it a few more times, like I have with Crystal Skull. I did like the fact that the Russians were the villains in Crystal Skull, because that was kind of like the Red Scare and
Yeah.
everything. That made perfect sense for the
In
times.
the
Yeah,
50s, exactly.
So who were the villains in the '60s? Still the Russians, but.
Well, yes, Russians and to a certain extent Nazis still, because we were.
Yeah, but they weren't the villains. They were our
but
friends at the time. So I think the
No.
Russians were still our.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they never mentioned Vietnam by name, even though obviously that's the war that Mutt died in, right? So
I thought he said.
I think he said, maybe he said
I thought
Vietnam.
he said I would go back and stop him
Enlisting or
from-
something, so he wouldn't die. Maybe I don't think he said Vietnam.
Maybe they did.
And
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah.
Anyway, I think that
And see, I think that's the other thing that's great is, as the other point made is, Indiana, Fortune and Glory. He doesn't do this for Fortune and Glory. And he's like, but you know what? Because she's like, oh, who would you, what would you get? What would you do if you could time travel? And he's like, you could tell he wouldn't, but if he did, it's like, I'd go back and save my son.
well,
That's
right,
it.
because he's seen some shit
Right.
and she hasn't. So perhaps after she's
Yes.
seen more shit,
Exactly.
then she will not feel the same way.
Well, and I think she did.
I don't know,
during
dude. I
this,
feel
and
like she's the same
like,
person at the end. I think that she's just going to go right out and do the same thing later. It's a temporary
I don't
retreat,
think so.
a temporary reprieve. I don't think she's learned anything from this experience.
Well, if we get Kathleen Kennedy's
Indiana
Phoebe
Indiana
Waller-Bridge
Janet.
series, then we'll know. Indiana Janet.
It'll just be called Wombat.
What? Wombat. That's it. That's
Wombat.
your series right there.
There you go. That's the code name for it. Like Blue Harvest, it'll be Wombat.
Yeah, as soon as they say the production Wombat, everyone's going to be like, Kathleen Kennedy's going to destroy Indiana Jones now. It's been 20 years now. I don't think that it's Kathleen.
I don't think it's Kathleen Kennedy that's trying to destroy anything. I think it's everyone's trying to destroy everything. No, I'm kidding.
Everything.
I think it was a group effort. I think that
people need to let go of anything that's made is not going to be tailored to.
It's got to be tailored to the broadest possible audience. I understand that.
Well, and they're going to make the movie they want to make.
Right, but how did they make such a great movie like Raiders of the Lost Ark in the same system?
Because they didn't. They could make whatever they wanted, and they didn't have to.
I think it's all Disney's fault.
Same thing with Star Wars. I mean, it's arguably the Star Wars franchise went downhill starting with Empire.
Well, after Empire, you mean?
So. Well, yeah, after Empire, starting with because Return of the Jedi. It's like, well,
absolutely.
Would George could they have made a Return of the Jedi that was better? I think so, but it was like, oh, now we have to resolve all these things, and now there's these expectations, and there's these characters that people have toys of that they want to see more of. How do we appease all that instead of going, we're just going to make the movie?
Well, right. Well, obviously, like you always say, no one goes into the idea of making a bad movie. They're not trying to make. I feel like
nobody goes except for Galactica 1980. No one ever makes a TV show or a movie. Well, they're on record saying we just did the goofiest, stupidest things we could to try to get canceled because we weren't going to be able to make the thing we wanted to. So we tried to get canceled, but even then, they had their intention was we're going to make the best show we can. And at some point they weren't able to, so that's when they were like, but nobody ever goes out to make a terrible movie or a bad TV show, and they definitely don't go out and with the intention to piss off fans.
Wow.
Because then there would have to be a consensus of what fans actually want.
Which is not possible.
Before, yes. So nobody goes to dishonor characters. Nobody goes out to piss off fans. Nobody goes out to be whatever to an actor. It's like I love all the people that are going off on a tangent here. I love all the people that are still trying to lobby for Henry Cavill's job as Superman. He deserves this and stuff. It's like, dude, you know what? He doesn't care right now. He just got handed his dream franchise to do whatever he wants to.
Well, yeah. If you've been an actor for any length of time, you know that jobs end. Or you don't, or you don't get a job that you're trying to get, or things fall apart.
Yeah, they're like, oh, they disrespected him because they told him he was coming back, but then the new regime fired him and stuff. And it's like, I bet there were a lot of conversations that we don't know about.
Obviously, they're going. And
at the end of the day, he got Warhammer 40K to make movies and TV shows and be basically the decider of what happens there. I think he's all right. He's like, Superman was great, but this is my dream.
And I don't have to be quite so fit anymore, thank God. We didn't talk about the casting of Superman, actually. We didn't mention that. Speaking of Superman.
We didn't.
And Lois Lane. I think that they, it's funny. The guy they cast as Clark Kent Superman looks a lot like a young Henry Cavill. I mean, obviously it's a type, but I think that I'm forgetting who they are. But the names, I have to look.
Cornyswet is the guy's last name. I don't remember his first name.
David.
I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I'm actually more excited by Rachel Brosnahan getting cast as Lois Lane because she was amazing as Mrs. Maisel for 5 seasons, and as soon as I heard she was in the running, I'm like, man, I hope she gets Lois Lane because she will just
she'll
I
think they're both. I mean, he looks pretty good. I mean, David Cornyswet, he looks like Superman. He looks like Clark Kent. Put some glasses on him. He's fine. I don't know what his acting's like, but the funny thing is, I'm sure you could find out he's been acting for a long time. He's not an unknown. He's been doing a lot of supporting work. He was doing a lot of work over the years.
Yes.
And obviously, Rachel Brosnan. Is it Brosnan or Brosnahan? You think? Let's go with that. I think that
Brosnan. Yeah.
she's gonna be great. I think that she's perfect for Lois Lane, and I don't know why.
And the dude they cast said 4 years ago, he's like, "Yeah, my dream job would be
Yep.
if I could ever play Superman, that would be amazing." And it's like, so you know that he's like going to put his all into this because he's like, "All right, I got a
Yep.
lot to live up to, and this is the role I've been building up to, and I think he's going to do amazing. She's going to be amazing." I I have not seen a James Gunn movie
Mm-hmm.
I haven't liked, and I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, he's too silly for this," and I think he's smart enough now as a filmmaker, probably even always been smart enough as a filmmaker to know that he can't make a trauma Superman
Well,
movie, right?
or would that be
So
the sickest Superman movie ever? I don't know.
it could be, but I think what folks have been missing in all the things that everyone has said about this, including the actors cast, James Gunn, and all that, is the intention is to make kind of a brighter, more positive Superman movie, which everyone is like, oh, Zack Snyder kind of ruined it because he made this really, Superman would have never let Pa die. Superman would have never done this, and he's just broody and all this kind of stuff. Well, guess what? They agree with you, and they're going to go in a different direction. But now that's wrong apparently
Well,
because it's not Zack Snyder. People are still trying to
the
lobby
great
for
thing is
Zack
there'll be
Snyder
another
to
Superman movie
continue.
in
And
10 years.
even Snyder is like, I'm
Right?
done.
They'll just reboot it again in
Anyway,
10 years, so it doesn't really matter.
exactly. This guy will be
Yep.
Superman for 10 years. They'll make a few movies, maybe have some
That's it.
crossover
That'll
movies,
be
and
somebody.
then
That'll be somebody else. Yep.
they'll redo it again.
Uh,
Yeah. So
I would say I agree with you. I would say that I'm really interested to see. In fact, I'm more interested in a Superman film with James Gunn directing because I don't know what it's going to be. You know, I mean, obviously Superman is an
yeah,
iconic character that people know, and it's easy to say he's going to be like this or like that. I mean, still for me, the greatest Superman ever was Christopher Reeve. So we'll see how that goes. And he was, I feel like he's the ideal, maybe the Gun is working towards. You know, he's the truth, justice, American way, boyhood, small town kindness, that kind of thing, manners. You know, being a good guy basically, and not being a gritty sort of guy who snaps necks. I think that's something that people are reacting to with the Zack Snyder version. But that was the Snyderverse. That's what he was going for. So I think this will be more of a
right,
return
right.
in some ways to the more idealized portrait of Superman. It's like, here's what Superman stands for. He's a good person. He believes in truth and justice. I never lie, like he says to Lois, and like Christopher Reeve says to, he says, I never lie, Lois. And you
Yep.
believe him. Plus, also, Christopher Reeve was fucking amazing in
Yes.
that role. But I think this guy is going to be fine. And I think that she's a great choice. And I'm really, I'm actually excited about a Superman movie again. So
It's funny
I can like
because
things, Joe. I can like things.
yeah, well, I see that. That's great. I've been a fan of Superman the character for a very long time, for all my life. And I recently wrote an essay for a book that was basically my essay was going through all the changes and all the iterations of Superman's origins over the last 80 years. The characters have been around for 80 years, over 80 years,
And he
and it's
looks
changed
great.
a lot during that time. So one of the things, it's like, oh, you know what? For everyone, it was like, well, that's not Superman. I'm like, well, it is from this era, yes, and it is from these other parts. So when you say that's not Superman, I think that everyone's reacting to the Superman they grew up with, and a lot of people, especially for people that really only experience and see Superman in the movies, Christopher Reeve's Superman is the benchmark, and rightly so because he did a fantastic job. But at the same time, it's like that was what Superman was like at the time that DC Comics were published. He's changed since then. He was different before then. So same thing with Batman. It's like, oh, Batman wouldn't do this. Well, he would back. Batman wouldn't kill. Well, for the first couple of years, he was snapping necks and killing bad guys
Yeah.
in the comic books. People don't realize that. So, Superman did that too. He threw people, off of buildings and stuff like that for a number of years. So no, Superman wouldn't kill. It's like, well, that really only came about when the comic comic code authority came around and said, you can't have, these are for kids. You can't have your heroes killing people. They're like, yeah, you're right. So then they were like, okay, now they have a code.
Yeah.
They don't kill, right? So it's like, which version of these 80-year-old characters that have emulated the times in which the comic books are set are you talking about as?
Yeah, I bet you Superman killed some Nazis.
Well, I know he did.
I'm
Captain
saying,
America
of course he
killed
did.
Nazis,
Well, I mean, Captain America killed some dudes in modern Marvel movies too. I mean, you think those guys
yes.
in Winter Soldier that Cap kicked off the ship? You think they survived? I don't think so. They're at sea. I think they got lost at sea. They're dead.
It was like Batman versus Superman. People are like, oh, Ben Affleck's Batman is killing guys left and right. Batman would never do that. Well, as a matter of fact, he
Nolan's
would, yes,
Batman, I think that the problem is that people are saying this have a memory that lasts like 10 years. So it's like, I saw the Nolan movies.
Right,
In the Nolan movies, Batman didn't kill anybody. He stops Catwoman from killing people. But that's Nolan's interpretation of the character based on more modern comic versions.
Yes. Well, exactly, and that's kind of the point I'm leading to is whoever is making, James Gunn is going to make the version of Superman that he thinks is Superman, that he grew up reading, that he's familiar with, much like Zack Snyder made his version of Superman. What like, this is what, to me, Superman is. Christopher Nolan with Batman. This is, Batman, because he probably grew up with, with the Frank Miller Dark Knight comics, whereas for Brave and the Bold, they may want to go, especially if they're doing a lighter Superman, they may want to go more towards like what Batman was like in the 60s or something like that. Whoever's making that movie may go, those comics from the 60s and the Batman TV show are my favorite things. I know we can't be as campy as that, but that's the kind of tone I want to bring forward, right?
Oh,
so I would love to see. I would think it would be great. It's like have it set in the '60s and have it. Let's do a.
Then I feel like it would be too much like what's that movie? Spy Who Shagged Me or whatever. That kind of thing. But Austin Powers.
True, Austin Powers. Yeah, that's the same reason why you couldn't do. Oh, Strange New World should look and feel exactly like the '60s original series. It's like then you run into, like you said, parody. Yeah. And people are gonna 10 people would watch that, and it would be canceled in.
Well, there'd be a lot more misogyny too, probably.
So. Yes, exactly.
Things have to evolve with times. I get that too. So yeah, you're again. I'm looking forward to it. I think that it's going to be a very, very interesting take on the character. I think it'll be more optimistic. I mean, if you think about it, James Gunn's movies are, I think, optimistic in a lot of ways. And I think that he's gravitated towards some character like Superman because Superman's an optimist. He believes in people being good. He believes in whatever. And he's like, got to reconcile the fact that a lot of people are not good. And it's got to be hard for someone like him to be like, you know what, I wish you could be I wish you could be nicer, but you're not, and I've got to beat the shit out of you and hurl you into the sun. I'm sorry, you brought this on yourself. So,
yes, exactly. Anyway. Well, it sounds like because James Gunn has been posting pictures about from Grant Morrison's 12-issue Superman series, and if he's basing on that, there's a lot of whack. I think he's the right person to bring that to film because there's some wacky concepts that are based on various versions of Superman's origin and past, and I think that would I don't know if they're leaning in that direction, I would be very happy for that. At the same time, though, I thought Man of Steel was a great film, and I love that take on Superman. I suppose I'm not so. I guess set on, well, if they do this kind of movie, if they do an Indiana Jones movie, or if they do a Star Wars movie, or if they do a Superman movie, it absolutely has to be that. I always hate those articles that are like, here's the 30 things that we need to have happen.
Well, they also got to write articles
blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, it's like, well, you're already disappointed now because probably none of those things are going to happen because, you're not making the show. It's like, so I don't know. There's too much like, I want this to be the way that I want it to be. And if it's not exactly like that, then it's the most terrible thing ever. It's like, well, why are you even entertainment,
bro?
go make the stuff. Why don't you
Exactly.
get into
They don't own the IP. They
filmmaking
can't, man.
and stuff and make it yours?
I just like the fact that in All-Star Superman, which is what
Right.
we're talking about, the Grant Morrison All-Star Superman, that
Yes.
Superman is dying of skin cancer, basically. Too much
Yeah.
sun, man.
Yeah,
Too
it's
much
kind of
sun. I
interesting
love that.
take.
That
Yes.
whole run was great because it's basically a self-contained, storyline where you could just sort of come into it and understand what's happening, and you don't have to necessarily know that much about Superman. You could just get into this character and read the whole thing. In fact, I want to read it again. I haven't read it in a long time, so I have the trades over here on my shelf.
I want to now
But
too.
if he's
exactly.
basing it on
The
that,
bottom
that's
line
awesome.
bottom line is in any version of Indiana Jones, any version of Superman and Batman and Captain America, Nazis are terrible, horrible people and should not exist.
There you go.
So
Speaking of Nazis,
you should always punch them.
And the only other thing we're going to talk about today is Strange New Worlds, and there are no Nazis in Strange New Worlds. There are, however,
Yes.
Romulans. Spoilers.
Which are kind of like space
are they?
Nazis. So.
I guess the Romulans are the Klingons
No,
or the
not
Russians.
really, I
the
guess.
Romulans could be space Nazis. We don't really know. Although they're tied to Vulcans, so maybe I don't know. But
Yeah,
as much as I enjoy Strange New Worlds, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, this was not my favorite episode.
You didn't
It's not
like
that I didn't
this
like
either.
it. I didn't like it as much as some of the other episodes. It was a bit of a. I guess I miss Anson Mount too. I think I miss Captain Pike. I know why he's not in it. I know they're ramping up to something,
Yeah.
but this also, from a production standpoint, it leads me to like, oh, dude, they got to save money because they got more stuff coming up. So let's set it in modern America, in modern Ontario or wherever they were, which I think was funny. I did like their relationship, and I did like the fact that. Kirk is still a ladies' man, no matter what timeline he's in. All the
Yes,
babes love
he
Kirk.
is. Yes.
And I think he's doing a good job playing Kirk. Actually, he gets the mannerisms of Shatner, but he's making it his own too, much like what's his face is doing with Spock.
Chris Pine.
The guy who's playing Spock, Ethan Peck. Yeah.
Oh,
he's doing with
Ethan
Spock.
Peck, yeah.
He's got the Nimoy sort of mannerisms in some ways, but he's definitely making Spock his own character, which I appreciate. And I like Christina Chong as La'an. And I here's the thing though, do you have to keep tying everything to Khan? I mean, I know Khan is an interesting villain. It's like, but now we have to go back in time and see Baby Khan. I mean, I don't know. I guess
Sure,
why not? I know, but it's like, are there no other villains in the franchise? I mean, I don't know. I didn't hate it. I just thought it was kind of.
Jeez, man.
I'm not
You're
cynical.
so
It's not cynicism. It's just like, come up with something else. I mean, you guys are super smart and talented, and I know why you're doing it. You have a character whose last name is Noonien Singh. Obviously, it's going to come up at some point. But even that kind of, I don't know. I like the character, and I like the actress who portrays the character, and I think she's definitely evolved away from, that lineage. But it's like what they did with Khan in Into Darkness. It's like, okay, I got it, but it's like he's just. I feel like that's fan service, and I don't mind fan service again, but it's just like now we have to talk about why she's related to Khan and how that happened. So. And then we have to have another time travel story. It's like people just magically show up with time travel devices. You got to fix the timeline. And I know that happened in all the other Star Trek shows. I got it. But
I was going to say, time travel stories are a staple.
they
of Star
are. And then they
Trek,
had the temporal, whatever, the time travel cops, basically.
the Department of Temporal
I just think
Investigations. Yeah, I was like,
I was just
oh,
thinking about
sweet,
cool.
cool.
Time Cop for some reason. And I was like, where's Jean-Claude Van Damme?
I think it would be funny, and now I know they're not going to do this because he's actually going to show up as Lieutenant Kirk later in the season. But I think it would have been great if every time they have Kirk show up on the show, it's an alternate universe version of him. Because so far it has been. It's like, all right,
Yeah, you're right,
pretty
because
funny.
he was in that alternative one where it's yeah, that's
in
right.
the first season. But I definitely agree that he kind of came into his own with the role in this episode. Because I'm like, all right, especially when he's like going on about the hot dogs, and he's like, oh, I'll earn this money by hustling chess. Because it's like, oh, that, it was great. And I like the fact that, so a little behind the scenes, they originally were intending to go shoot this episode in New York City. But they're like, yeah, we can't afford that. And they're like, okay, well, Toronto always doubles as New York City anyway. We'll just have it. We can just cleverly shoot. And then I guess in discussing it, they're like, why don't we just have it set in Toronto? So it was nice little because Toronto always stands in for New York. So having to think, oh yeah, we're in the 21st century, New York City, and she's like, it's Toronto,
Yeah.
you doof. Uh, I thought that was pretty great. That was kind of nice. It's like, oh,
Yeah, no,
finally.
she's
So,
great, and they both were. I thought
um,
they were not. The episode was not a problem because of the performances at all. I thought they were good. The Romulan. I thought the girl who played the Romulan was good. I thought everybody was good in the show. I just
and they got to kill
Yeah,
Kirk.
she was thrilled about
That's
that.
great.
Yeah, I just you know what? If we hadn't just had such an amazing episode right before this, maybe that was part of it too. Because this seemed like not a letdown, but that the Ad Astra Per Aspera episode that was
Yeah, that
pretty
was
epic.
pretty
It was great,
outstanding.
a great episode
Yeah.
of television, not just of Star Trek. And then this seemed like, oh, now we have to kind of, what are we going to do?
Try to
Well,
one
not
up
necessarily
it
try to
or
one up. It's
something.
like, now what do we do? Oh, well, because I feel like this is an episode where we have to save money, and we're going to have a show with just two characters basically, and they're going to time travel because that's always something we do in Star Trek, and then it's going to involve La'an because it's Khan and whatever, and we'll bring Kirk in for some reason just to show him as Kirk again, and then we'll just do this whole thing, and then nothing really changes except now she's bummed out every time she checks on Kirk. But then, of course, that character never appears in Star Trek later. Kirk never has a girlfriend who's whatever. But that doesn't matter.
That we know
That's
of. I mean, she could be on a
that's true.
different ship and they
That's
could
true.
have a
That's absolutely
relationship.
true. But obviously,
So,
they're never going to have one, and so she's bummed out about that. But
no.
and this character can't survive because she never comes back in any of the shows. So because they talk about number
Right.
one, obviously they talk about
Well, again, she doesn't have to get all the characters that don't.
No, they
show
all
up
have to die,
on other
man.
Star Trek shows from this. They don't
have to die
all
off screen.
die. They can
They all
be
have to die off screen.
reassigned.
In Vietnam.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
In
See,
Vietnam.
that's how it works.
Yes.
Planet Nam.
Vietnam.
Exactly. So,
Yes.
but I
No, I really liked it. I do like. I thought it was interesting that they acknowledge that since they're determined that this takes place in the real world, that obviously eugenics war didn't happen in the 90s. So how do you solve a problem
Yeah.
like Khan in the 90s? And they did that. It's like the timeline's readjusting itself. Because I like her. She's like almost hysterically. I've been. It was supposed to be in '92, and
yeah,
I've
I've
been
been here
here
for 30
since
years
then.
waiting for this shit to happen. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I like that. My only thing is I've never understood why they had to readjust that. Well, the eugenics war didn't happen in the 90s. I'm like, why not? Why can't that have happened in the Star Trek universe? And I know they're like, well, in Voyager, they went back to the present day that was in the late 90s, and there's nothing like that going on. It's like, well, they should have written
Yeah.
that differently. And I know what that stems from. Everyone's like, well, Star Trek is supposed to be our world, the future of our world. And I said, and for me, it's like, well, that's demonstrably false, because if it did take place in our world, then when Kirk and Spock went back in time and were walking around San Francisco, they would have been besieged by autograph hunters. It's like, oh, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy. So the fact that Star Trek is entertainment and those actors don't exist in the past of Star Trek, it's a fictional
biggest
world, guys.
obviously
It really-
the
it really
problem
is.
stems from the
So,
fact, as you know, that the show was made in the 60s, and they thought 1996 was a
Yes,
fucking
exactly.
30 years in the future.
that was 30 years.
Shit's all gonna happen. It's like Blade
exactly.
Runner, the
So,
2019. The replicants are gonna, we're gonna be living in,
Yes.
in terrible conditions in Los Angeles. It's gonna be like balloons trying to go to the off-world colonies.
that would be like if Blade Runner 2049 had this whole sequence where they explained how that really wasn't 2019. That was the calendar was off. It was really 2039, only 10 years ago. And just let it exist in there. It's a fictional construct. It's a fictional universe. Eugenics war could have happened in the 90s in the Star Trek universe.
It could have happened in the 90s. It could have been called terrorism, right? Who knows? It was all a big conspiracy.
Right,
Well, it's like I have a
exactly.
poster for Soylent Green on my wall, and it says it's the year 2022. And I'm just saying, because
Right.
2022 seemed like a long time in the future when they made Soylent Green and wrote the book. It's like,
Yes.
it was called Make Room, Make Room. It wasn't called Soylent Green. But anyway,
Well, it's also fiction.
right. But
That's
I mean,
okay.
that's where all of this stems from, that Space Seed episode where they talk about the eugenics wars in 1996 or whatever it was. And that's all because of that. Now they
Right.
have to worry about canon from the original series when they could just retcon everything, which is what they're doing now, or just ignore it. But they can't do that because now everyone has.
because then
People have to
people will
play it
pull it
apart. So
apart.
I like the fact that they tried to solve it, and they solved it in a sort of a clever
Yeah,
way.
that was a good,
Yeah,
clever
exactly.
thing.
But
Yeah.
you could also make the
Yes.
case that the timeline in this series is still different than the original series timeline because it is slightly different, I think. And it doesn't matter because there's been enough temporal whatever Cold War shit that's happened. So who knows if it's the real timeline at all, or if it even matters. There's really no point.
It just got adjusted. I think like I agree. I like the the unsatisfactorily resolved temporal Cold War for Enterprise. It's like, you know what? We can be smart and we can use that as, because there is interference then. It continuously, readjusts the main timeline, and now we have Khan existing in the 21st century as opposed to the 1990s
Right.
and things like that. And I'm okay with that. I thought that was a clever thing. It's like, wow, that's just a quick line of dialogue that just explained all of the anomalies. Why does the technology work better? Well,
Yeah.
temporal Cold War. And I know people will be like, oh, that's just a hand wavy thing. But I'm like, well, if you adhere to all of this, it happens in the real world, then how do you explain it? And that is a great science fiction trope to
Yeah, everything
explain
just
it.
ripples
So,
forward and fixes itself. Yeah, no, I think that was cool.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I'm saying. I liked this episode a lot. I just didn't. I think comparing it to the one before, it kind of was wanting, and then also from like a, I used to make TV perspective. It's like I know why they did it because it was cheap, which means they
well, yeah,
had to,
exactly.
which means they're saving their money for something else. Obviously, there's going to be the Gorn War or whatever's going to happen later, so they're going to need all that money for effects. But this was a nice, self-contained. I don't want to say bottle episode because it wasn't, but it was a nice, self-contained story that had some cool elements. Kirk hustling chess was interesting because Spock. They always talk about playing chess, so that was kind of cool. And I did
Yep.
like the fact that in the one thing that they didn't know each other, and it's like, oh, maybe in a different world we would be friends, but not in this one or something, which was kind of cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
guess my thing is, I like the fact that they're trying to do something different, but also it feels familiar, which I think is a hard thing to pull off. And I think one of the things that sort of was less interesting to me for Dial of Destiny is that the familiar but also fresh, and that's what they're doing here. I think it's a balance, and they're doing a really good job with that in this show. My only downs for this episode were just like I understand why they did it, and I didn't necessarily have to see this whole thing about Khan, but that's fine. I like Khan as a character; it's still an interesting, and people. It's very
Sure.
popular with people, so obviously. But if we think about it the way we were just talking about it, it had to be Khan because that's how you readjust the timeline. So it makes sense from that.
Exactly.
But see, that's driven by
Yeah.
story and character. That makes sense to me. Whereas
Right.
you know.
Well, and it,
She doesn't sit around and talk about that one time when
I
I
know.
drank the blood of Kali or whatever. It's like I don't need to hear that. Okay, so anyway,
Well, it's sort of. I don't even know where I was going to go now. Oh, yes, before the season aired, in all the interviews, Akiva Goldsman, Anson Mount, and Kurtzman, they were all talking about how this season of Strange New Worlds, they're taking some big swings. And, anytime it's like, especially if they're doing that a lot, are all of them going to go over the fence?
No.
Probably not. But I applaud them for, again, as I've always said, if you're going to do a new version of something or you're going to do a sequel, do something different with it. It doesn't have to be like dramatically different or hugely different, but I like the fact that they're like, yeah, we're having a original series aesthetic here, but we're gonna do some big things with it, and we're gonna do some fun things, and I think they've succeeded so far. Do they all land perfectly? No,
no, but
that's
for
okay.
this series in particular, I think their track record so far is pretty damn good. I mean, there hasn't been,
Yeah,
in my
absolutely.
opinion anyway, there hasn't been any real dud episodes. There hasn't been any bad episodes for sure. And even though I might not have
No.
liked this one as much as the last one was really hard to compare it to because that was fucking amazing. That was great television. It was a great episode.
Right.
And so this was always going to be a downer a little bit. And I think they know that. It's like, wow, we just had a huge, like, whatever you want to call it, moment, revelatory moment in the franchise and in this show and with these characters. And now we need a breather. We need to keep things more contained, and we need to have a story focus on totally
Yes.
different characters and everything. And this is a thing with Lon that's been brewing for a while. Especially was talked about in the last episode. Are you related to Khan Noonien Singh? Well, why? Yes, I am. So
Yes.
it made sense. I find it interesting though that her DNA could open the door to that place.
Yeah, it seems like short-sighted to set it up. Well, I don't know though. Maybe they're like, well, we'll have it triggered by DNA so that nobody else can get in here, and they didn't plan on someone from the
Well,
future
of
with the
course they
same
didn't plan on
DNA
someone from
coming
the
back.
future.
But
Yeah, that makes sense. But
yeah,
it still brings me up my question of, is she augmented? Also, why is she not very strong? Because the Romulan beat the shit out of her pretty easily. So that's weird.
yeah. I mean, several generations.
Yeah.
I think she's still augmented, but probably
To the
not obviously to the extent of being able to take on a
Yeah,
Romulan.
yeah,
So
I guess that's true. So anyway, I enjoyed it, and I still like the fact that they're putting in Mabenga as kind of like the de facto sparring guy for everybody, because that guy is a good martial artist in real life. So that was pretty cool.
yeah, exactly. It's like, well, we'll play to his strengths.
Yeah, he's
So
great. He's a
that
great
works.
character. He's like, "Why are you upset? Like, what's going on?" It's like, "I don't want to talk about it. Fuck you." He's like, "Okay," but he's like trying to help people. But I
Well,
wonder, there was a moment there, and maybe I misread it, but the way he was playing it, I think, was, "I could be that person for you."
well, I think
I
he's
know,
trying
but
to
I'm
help her because, especially when she's like, what do you suggest? And he's like, well, you could see your
right, but
physician.
I think he's thinking.
She's
I
like,
wonder if
dude,
he's thinking
just,
like as more than a physician. Because I kind of felt like maybe he's got a
well,
thing for
maybe.
her a little bit. But that's okay.
Well,
I
it
mean,
could
everyone
be.
has to fuck
I
on the
don't know.
show. I mean, obviously Chapel and Spock fuck at some point, but then they break up, so it doesn't work out.
Right.
I don't want your fucking soup. I know I bring that up every episode, but it's like it's still a funny thing from space, or not, from a muck time, where he's like, I don't want your fucking plum mix soup.
He
I
throws it
also
out
love the
into
fact that he's like, I can
hallway
learn to make plum mix soup in a toilet. That was a great throwaway line too.
yes. That was
It was
that
funny.
pretty
It was
great
funny,
as
and that
well.
he's a
Yeah.
chess hustler. I appreciate that, because I love chess, so that was also neat. So, but it wasn't. He's like, this. I'm only playing in one
Yes.
dimension. This is easy. It's like child's play here. You should try
Yeah.
3-dimensional chess, you
Yeah.
fuckers.
Like in the hot dogs, as your commanding officer,
sure, hot
I
dog.
order you. She's like, well, you're not actually, and he's like,
You're
I'm gonna
not
go get
technically
another
in my
one.
in my
It's like,
service at all. So
yeah, and I would be remiss to not mention Carol Kane too, who is just exceptional as her character Palia.
yeah,
So,
that was good, and I love the fact that they went to her for help. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not an engineer, because that could.
yes,
Because that
did-
could have been like a Deus Ex Machina or whatever. It's like, oh, we'll just go to the person who lives forever and she can fix everything. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't become an engineer for like 100 years. I don't know what you.
She's like engineer.
I don't know anything about
not,
trains.
I don't know. I don't. I haven't liked math since it actually tied into Dial of Destiny, didn't it? Archimedes.
Yeah, it's all about
So,
Archimedes and displacement theory or whatever. Displacement, water displacement.
yes, but yeah, she's like engineering. Well, now that
Yeah,
you mention it,
that's
it's
probably
like
what-
so did
yeah.
Lon.
That's what
get her
that's
on
what
the
gave her
track
the
to be
idea.
an
Yeah,
engineer.
it's like, I'm gonna try that because I live
Yeah.
forever. But I love that having immortal characters like that is always a trick. But it's interesting the way she plays it. I think it's like, I'm fucking bored. I don't die.
And that painting they allude to, where she says it's a
it's
fake,
real.
and the Louvre should start calling her, is actually a painting that has been stolen in our present day and been missing for like 10 years. There's like a $10 million reward for information for that. There's 13 paintings, and that one's the most valuable. And so she stole it because it was sitting there in her warehouse.
Or she
I think
painted it
that's
because
pretty
she's
great.
been different people all this time. So.
That's true.
Well, that's the thing about Immortals, and that's what I always liked about Highlander too. It's like, this guy's lived a long time and he's amassed all this wealth and power and everything, but he keeps a low profile, right? Or you have to keep coming back
Right.
as your son or your grandfather or whatever. I think they touched on that a little bit in Eternals. I thought was interesting with the character, with the actor, with the Indian character. What the hell was his name? He's like playing. I have to play my son now or something in this
yeah.
new movie. I don't mean to say
Yes.
Indian character. I apologize, but it's like that's not what I meant. But he isn't. He is from India, so I guess technically he's Indian. But
well, yes.
but I don't.
I would be very interested to see how they would do if Chad Stahelski can do his Highlander movie. Back in the 80s, it was plausible that you probably knew people that could fake driver's licenses and stuff like that. So before that, you could play. Oh yeah, it's time to move on and be my son in a different location.
Yeah.
But in this digital day and age, how
Well,
would
I
that
think
work?
they'll figure out a way to do that. It's like, obviously you got a guy working for you
Yeah.
who can like control the internet or whatever, or you're just an elusive billionaire that no one sees, or who knows. But I think that they'll find a way to tie in the John Wick universe with Highlander, because I think all the assassins in the John Wick universe are actually Highlanders.
That's how they do a John Wick 5. It's like, well, it turns out that he's
Well,
actually
that's the thing. The
immortal.
High
So,
Table is actually a bunch of Highlanders, right? It's a
yeah, there,
bunch of
there
immortals
you
who
go.
just, we live forever and we're bored. So we're playing games with our little pawns to kill each other. But
So, so Wick didn't actually die at
no,
the
because
end of spoilers
no,
at
he
the end of
didn't cut off
John
his
Wick
head.
4, and there's nobody in the grave, but Winston and the Bowery King teamed up. It was like, all right, we'll fake your death and we'll have a fake grave for you. But you can't be in New York anymore. You got to
You
go
go to
someplace
Scotland.
else. Yeah,
Well,
you have
no,
to go to
that's it. They
Scotland now
didn't cut.
and
They didn't cut off
lay
his
low
head.
for a
He's
while.
not dead.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I think you.
But
I
did you
think you're
notice?
onto
Didn't they
something
cut
there.
off Sharon's head? That's what I'm saying.
Yes. There's no quickening
Wow, that's
though.
true. That's a good point. That was off screen.
Yeah, that was
Off
off
screen
screen
in
in
Vietnam.
Vietnam.
Yeah. So, all right. Anyway, that's. Do we have Strange New Worlds? Anything else? I love the show. I think it's fascinating to me. I'm so happy we have such a great. I keep saying this, but I'm so happy we have such a great Star Trek show to watch. It makes me happy. So
Yes.
even when other things are not going as well as I hope in the world, I still at least have Star Trek to turn
In a world.
turn back to. Oh, you said you were going to watch Silo and The Bear. You watched the first episode of The Bear. We can talk about that for a second. Have you watched the rest of it?
I have not. I've taken a break from the
pretty
bear
intense.
because it's pretty intense. I think I would have appreciated it more with a week break
Yeah.
between episodes because
It
it's
is.
a lot. And so I've taken a break and I have
Yeah. What do you
started
think of Silo
Silo.
so far?
So I've watched the first three
Okay.
episodes of Silo. It's interesting. I'm not sure if it's interesting enough for me to continue, but it's interesting. But I already have a theory about the
Okay.
outside. So I don't know if you want to hear it or if you want to.
Yeah, you can tell me, or you want to wait. We can talk about it later. But
Well, it's there's a couple different schools of thought for me. Is like one, are they putting poison in the suits that they send the people out in? Because if they're in a suit, then why are they just suddenly dropping dead?
because the environment is
Unless
so
they don't
dangerous.
have any
That's why
oxygen or anything.
you can't go outside.
But then why? So when the sheriff went out, he saw a lush greenery just like his wife, and he didn't see the bodies lying around.
Interesting.
So are they still being poisoned, and whatever is poisoning them causes them to hallucinate, or is the footage that people are seeing inside doctored so that they see, well, yeah, this person went out, yeah, they cleaned, but then they died? Because notably, we did see the wife's face in the mask when she was cleaning, but we didn't see the sheriff's. It was just a dark
Interesting.
visor.
I could tell you the
So,
answer, but then it would spoil it for you. So,
Don't tell me. So they do answer that this season.
dude, it's a great
what you're
show.
saying.
It's a fucking great mystery show, and that's
Okay.
the main thrust of what you're talking about. Is the main sort of thrust of the entire series so far. Plus, there's anyway. I won't tell you anything else. But yes, they explain some things, but there's more mysteries.
Okay.
Further mysteries for season 2, obviously, which has already been.
Because I would be bummed if the sheriff is gone for good, because I like that actor. And it just seems weird that, well, we're going to set him up as like the main character in the first episode and then kill him off in 5 minutes in the second
Well,
episode.
I will tell you,
Like, wait,
he's
that was
not
a
the main
weird
character.
flex.
of the show.
Well, I know Rebecca Ferguson is supposed to be, but
And it is kind of a weird switch, but it all gets explained and it all makes sense. And she does a bang up job and earns your respect as a character, and you totally are rooting for her by the end. So I would say don't give up.
cool, good.
So
Okay.
anyway, yeah, it's a great show. I'm thrilled.
I-
It's definitely different than the books in some ways, but obviously you had
Okay.
to change some things for a TV or movie to change things for that. But I think all the changes they made are for the better, honestly. And I think Hugh Howey, the author of the books, would agree. Plus, he was also a producer of the show, so I'm sure he didn't have anything bad to say about it. But yeah, it's a really good. The world building is excellent. It's a really good show. It's a slow burn a little bit, but that's okay. They pay off a lot of stuff, and there's still more mystery to go, which is amazing. So
And I find the leadership structure weird but interesting. I mean, you've got a sheriff, you got a mayor, but then you have this like spook squad, the judiciary. It's like,
I don't think you can say
do
Spook Squad
they
if
arrest?
Common is involved. That's not cool. That's not cool.
Oh, sorry. Well, you know what I
I'm just
mean,
giving
though.
shit, man.
Like it's a secret police, but we don't actually see
Judicial.
them, or at least in the episode I've seen, they don't like arrest anyone, but they just kind of show up, and whenever they show up, people are like, and so it's like they obviously have a history of like either disappearing people or because I guess they work for the judges. I'm not quite clear on that whole thing. So maybe it's supposed to be kind of like the three tiers of government.
Once
I
again,
suppose,
that's explored heavily in the show. So you will see
okay, cool.
and know a lot more. I think one of the strengths of the show is that it's like the metaphor of the onion, right, or whatever. It's like they peel off the layers, and the layers come off, and you get more
Right.
answers, but you also have more questions, which makes a great show, in my opinion. They don't give you everything up front, and they don't give you everything as it goes along because there's still more mystery. And now you get one thing, it's like, oh, that makes sense. And like, well, but what about this? And so that's
So the answers
sometimes,
lead to more
yeah,
questions, but in a
definitely in a very
satisfactory
satisfying way.
way.
I mean, they do answer a lot of questions.
Okay.
And again, I already knew a lot of the answers because I'd read the books, but it was still done so well that some of it was still a mystery and some of it's different than the book. So there was still stuff that's worthwhile for me. I just really thought it was great, and I recommend it highly to everybody. And and
There's some great people in the show too. I mean, Will Patton,
Yeah.
Common, yeah,
Academy
it's like,
Award
wow,
winning
this
actor
is,
Tim Robbins.
Yeah, Tim Robbins, who is in a very underplayed and not main character role
Not yet.
in a way. It's like, oh, that's interesting. It's economy of usage. It's like we're gonna get the best we can out of them when we use them, but we don't have to have. Them
Well,
front and
he,
center all the time.
obviously he figures more prominently later on. So, but yeah, it's a great show, and I'm really looking forward to season 2. I mean, they're filming it now, so hopefully we'll get it. But we will not get a season 3 of Strange New Worlds for a while because it's been delayed by the writer's strike, which is fine. Writers, get your money.
And there's still maybe an actor's strike.
Oh, that's a good point. So maybe we won't see some TV for a while, but it's okay. Everybody should get paid. So including
I think that's why big studios were canceling,
including you and I.
Comic-Con, because if there was an actor strike, they wouldn't be able to.
Well, right, they can't do promotions for anything. So yeah, so that makes sense. Anything else that we need to talk about for Strange New Worlds? I guess we can move on to finding. Are we going to do picks today, or are we? The show's pretty long. Maybe we'll skip picks this week.
Well, we'll skip this week because I was going to pick Dial of Destiny.
You were going to pick Dial of Destiny. Okay, well, that's fine. Dial of Destiny for you.
See, I was going to pick.
And I'm
going
to keep harping on the fact that people should be watching Silo and or The Bear or both. Not necessarily.
Yes, I would. I'll back you up on that because it's
dude.
they're both exceptional.
I know that The Bear is intense, but you have to. I mean, I would say keep going, and especially keep.
Sydney is my favorite character.
Yeah, Ida Barry is amazing as an actress too. But I think that that she gets more in the second season. But the second season, you got to get through the first season and watch all that to develop and everything, so you can get to the second season, which has one of the best TV episodes of all time called Forks. You got to watch that episode, dude. But you won't get it unless you watch the first season because anyway. So I would say keep going.
All right,
but yeah, so.
Okay. I will. It's just like, man, I need to.
Well, that's what it. Wait till you get to the episode in the first season where it's all one take. Basically, it's pretty intense. But
oh, nice.
Working in a kitchen is hard, and that's actually what it's like, right? So probably worse than that because you're right there and it's sweaty and everybody stinks and it's terrible. I was lucky that I didn't have to work in the. I was there for the prep stuff, but not during service most of the time, so it was good. But anyway. Okay, so find the Flickcast at the usual places, good pods, Facebook. I don't even know where we are. We're everywhere, man. Just look for us at the usual places. Obviously, you found the show already, Apple, etc. Joe and I are on the socials. What Joe writes, I'm at Chris U or Elric Picks at Instagram, and the Flickcast is the Flickcast everywhere, even on Twitter. No Blue Sky yet because no one has an invite for me apparently, or for Joe. So unless Joe's on Blue Sky, I don't know.
I didn't even know about Blue Sky until the other day.
He's not dialed in.
Is that invite only?
We're not dialed in either. We're not that cool. I'm still on Mastodon.
I don't have my finger on the pulse of
nor do I.
That kind of stuff.
Or
anything really.
We're just yelling at clouds here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll be back with another episode next week and talk about
Yes.
more Strange New Worlds probably and more whatever. And go off on some tangents.
Of course. No, we never
Talk
do
about
that.
Comic Con some more because that's always relevant. But
Sure.
anyway, anything else, Joe?
I think that's probably it.
All right, cool. So for Joe Dilworth, I'm Chris Lowrick. That was the Flickcast. Thanks for listening.